Welcome, Bitcoin friends. It's Bitcoin Mamo. Today we're going to look at the Bitcoin charts, do some TA, look at various time frames, and we'll also take a look at market cipher. So it has been a while since the last video. Again, apologize for the delay. Let's get straight into it. We're going to start here looking at the Bollinger Bands. This is on the 4-day time frame. And for those that don't know, the Bollinger Bands here can be an indicator of when we might see some volatility. And when these do squeeze together, it does indicate that a volatile move is more likely. And the closer they get, the more volatile that move can be. So basically, we can see on the 4-day time frame here, these bands have really started to squeeze over the last few candles. And so it's telling us that a move is likely due soon, and it should be a decent move. We can see when they did squeeze here, we did get quite a big move to the downside. We can look back in the past. We can see they were squeezing very tight here back in July of 2020. We spent about 12 days worth of candles here, and then we had this big move to the upside, which was actually a 38% move. So what we're going to look at now is we do have actually another indicator here with this red line, and this is the Bollinger Band width indicator. So when it is very low on the chart, it indicates that the two white lines are quite close together. When it is higher up on the chart, it indicates that they are much more spread out. So it can tell us how tight these bands are. And what we're going to do is look back in history on Bitcoin and see other times when the Bollinger Bands were this tight on the 4-day time frame. So just how tight are we here? It's down to a 0.16 reading. We can see back in November here, we got to about a 0.17 reading, quite similar. This happened just before we had this move to the downside, but we are still tighter in this squeeze here. So let's just look back on history here. We can go back over the whole Bitcoin chart. We can see it's only happened a few times that we have been this low or lower. And I've just marked those out with these yellow lines here. So the Bollinger Bands have only been this tight on the 4-day on 6 occasions previously over the last 11 or so years. So let's just have a look at these situations more closely. Obviously, we already looked at this one in July of 2020. The time we spent at our current level or lower was during these 4 candles. We can see it was only 12-day period. And after that, taking a measured move from the bottom, we can see we did a 38% move, basically within 20 days after entering this zone. So after squeezing, it took 20 days and then we were up 40%. And the next situation here, where we did dip below our current reading on the Bollinger Band width, this was during the 2018 bear market. We can see we went sideways for a long time. There was no volatility. The Bollinger Band squeezed. We dropped into that zone. And then we can see once we entered into that zone, we basically spent 12 days in that zone. We can see shifting this back approximately gets it there. So about 8 to 12 days. And then after that, we saw volatility and we actually dropped 50% in the following 12 days or so. Let's go to the next example now. We have to go back to 2016. This was the 2014-15 bear market here. This is where we see most of these examples. And we have been discussing that we think we're in a similar location here as that 2014, 15, 16, 17 cycle. And we're in a correction similar to this. But we can see the Bollinger Bands weren't as tight as our current reading until a little bit later on. But let's look at this example first. This was in October 2016. We entered that zone on the Bollinger Bands, spent about 8 days there, and then we did see this move to the upside. It did take a bit longer, approximately 82 days, but in those 82 days, we did see an 85% move to the upside for Bitcoin. And remember, this was near the start of the bull run. And we think we're in a position somewhere around here comparing them. So the one here where would be most similar to our current position, I think, after coming off the lows of the bear market. We can see we entered that zone on the Bollinger Band width, and we spent 8 days again in that zone. Once we exited it, took a few more days here, and after about 28 days, we started to see the move to the upside, and after 52 days, we had gone up 98%. So quite a big expansion. And these Bollinger Bands are quite a good tool to detect when we are going to have a volatile move. And going back here, this was the bottom of the bear market. We spent a long time consolidating near the lows. We can see a Bollinger Band squeeze. We dipped into that zone, and again, only around 8 days in that zone, and only 24 days later, we had a 33% move to the upside. So this can happen quite quickly, and I think we might see something similar sometime within the next 3 weeks. The final example here is in 2012. Bitcoin was only at $5 here, but we saw the Bollinger Band squeeze. This was the bottom of the bear market here in 2011. We dipped into that zone. They squeezed the tightest they have here down to a 0.1 reading. Basically, we spent 36 days in this zone here. And once we did break out of that zone, we can see after 108 days, we actually moved up 236%. So it is getting interesting. I think we're going to see a big move soon. Again, the Bollinger Bands have squeezed into this zone with this red line here. Perhaps we spend another week, maybe even 2 weeks, squeezing even tighter. The tighter the squeeze, the bigger the possible move. But I do think we will see that move soon. And I think it's more likely to be a move to the upside as we're just coming out of the bear market lows. And I think we're doing something similar to the cycle that started in 2014. This was the bear market here. This was the bottom of the bear market. Like our current cycle, we came out of the bottom of the bear market, had a correction, and then we had that second move. And now we've been spending time at the top, and then we had that drop. And now we have had another drop, but we didn't make a new low after that initial drop. And I think we're somewhere here, basically. And eventually we're going to see this volatility and another move to the upside. On this occasion, it was a 98% move, only 44 days after going into this zone on the Bollinger Band width. But we did talk about that for a while, so I'll try to quickly go over these other charts. This is the US stock market, the S&P 500 futures chart. We're on the 3-week time frame as these order blocks were significant. These order blocks are a break in a trend. We see all green candles, one red candle in between. So there were buyers and sellers here. Time was spent here and therefore volume. And these areas become of interest later on. They can act as support or resistance levels. We did have these two key order blocks, this red candle in an uptrend, this green candle in a downtrend. And we spent a lot of time here squeezed between these two order blocks. We can see with the last 3-week candle here, this did close on Tuesday. We have closed above these order blocks, but more importantly, above the main area here on the VPVR. This is the amount of volume traded at certain price levels. The most amount of volume was traded here where this red line is, and we can see we have spent now 6 weeks above that level. So this is looking good for the stock market. Again, we can come down and retest this order block. If it acts as support, we close back above it. That's definitely a good sign that we're going to move higher. And that's also good for Bitcoin. But let's look at Bitcoin now on a larger time frame. This is on the 3-week time frame. Main thing here is that we want to look at this trend line. This was the high in March of 2021, that 65K high. And we're just connecting the 2 points with this high on this dead cat bounce. We've been talking about this for a while. This line is keeping price down at the moment. We can see 3 red candles in a row here. It is still on the table that perhaps we still come down to that 25.3K area and maybe test this trend line for support. But the longer we spend here not breaking this low, it becomes more and more likely that we move to the upside, as we are starting to see some of the green dots on the higher term timeframes on Market Cipher. The 2-week, we're looking at the same thing. This trend line is still keeping the price down. But we can notice on the 2-week candle, in which this candle does close at the end of the week, we can notice we have held this 382 area on the Fibonacci, taking it from this low to the high. And when we only pull back to the 382, that is quite bullish. But again, I'm still not ruling out coming back to this 25.2, 25.3K area, and perhaps even testing this trend line for support. And down to the weekly time frame, that same trend line, we can see how we have spent a number of weeks now getting resistance at this trend line, and it has been 8 weeks in total here. And we also see that 382 support level. We have also spent around three and a bit weeks going sideways here without making a new low, which was at around 25.8K. And as mentioned, if we keep going sideways here, we will eventually break this trend line. And then I think we will see a move to the upside. The other thing to note here is we do have some weekly order blocks drawn in blue. And this order block here does seem to be significant. We can see with our previous week candle, we didn't actually close above it. We did get very close. We can see we didn't close above it. The next candle acted as resistance. So we didn't close above that order block. We got pushed back down. So this will be the first area we need to close above on a weekly time scale, above around 28,080. And then of course there is an order block higher up, sitting at 29.5 to 29.9. Another thing I've been watching for, what we haven't seen yet, is on the RSI. If we do go a bit lower here, we would make a lower low compared to this point, which would be lower lows on the RSI, but higher lows on the price action. And that would be hidden bullish divergence, and I would expect a bounce from that. And this will probably only occur if we do come down to that 25.3K area, but something to keep an eye on. Stochastic RSI still cooled off here. As mentioned, if we spend a few more weeks going sideways, we will break this trend line. The stochastic RSI would be ready to turn back to the upside. So I think if we are going to have this drop further down, should see it likely within the next week or so. We could also look at the VPVR, and we're basically in this clump here of price action. The low here is around that 26.8 area, and there is that gap still going down to 24.8. But so far, when we have dipped into this area, these wicks have been bought up. And we also have been getting support of the 200-week moving average in red here. So we're yet to close back below that after being below it for a period of time. And one of the key things I watch is this weekly EMA ribbon. We can see we came down into it. We pretty much came exactly to that yellow line, which is the 20-week exponential moving average. And the main thing I'm looking for here, this ribbon quite often acts as support, but once it does flip where the yellow lower moving average crosses the red higher moving average, it's more likely that it will act as support. And usually we bounce off the top of the ribbon off the yellow line on the first attempt. That still seems maybe a couple more weeks away, but we can see it has acted as support so far as we've dipped into it after closing above it. So this is a bullish stance here. I'm not expecting us to come down. We can look back in the past in previous bear markets here, going back to the one we've been comparing, 2014-15 bear market. This was the low. Coming off the lows, initially the ribbon acted as resistance. We got above it, and then we can see it acted as support here. The ribbon flipped, more likely to act as support, came to the yellow moving average, acted as support, and several times on all these dips. We can see we only dipped into the ribbon with the wicks mainly, but we went all the way up to the top of the bull market without closing any weekly candles below that ribbon once it did flip. So I think you need to have a bullish bias here. We look at the past history. Usually when we close above this ribbon, the bottom's in, and we tend to use it as support as we start and continue the bull market. And onto the daily time frame now. I do have all the daily order blocks in here. There are quite a few, so it does look a bit messy. But we can see since we reached the peak here at 31K, we have been in this downward channel. 2 touches on the top, 2 on the bottom, alternating touches. We can see we did pretty much come to the top here on this rally from the low. Now we have come back to that midline and seen a bounce, where previously the midline acted as resistance here. And we do also have a daily order block here, which did act as resistance on these attempts. And it's looking like we may close below it. For us to not close below it and at least inside it, on today's candle, we need to close above 26,980. There is an order block lower down, which acted as support here. We didn't close a daily candle below it. Again, we look at the closes and opens, not the wicks, when looking at order blocks. This order block lower down goes all the way down to 26,265. We can look at the daily EMA ribbon. We can see we got above it and below it. The problem with this is the EMA ribbon is more useful in trending markets when it is expanded. When we do have a lot of sideways action and it gets quite tight like this, it does become less reliable. So we can go above and below it several times. So I'm not placing too much weight on that. The other thing to note, if we do zoom into the price action just in this area, we see a massive amount of volume traded on the VPVR, much bigger than all the previous volume. And that's pretty much where we're getting support at the moment. And if we switch to the 4-hour time frame, we see that VPVR support here. And this is also actually the golden pocket area, taking it from this low to the high. So there's a bit of confluence there. I think we get a bounce here at least. Going back to the daily and looking at all of this price action, before we had this big run up here, we can see on the VPVR, there is still that spike there, pretty much where we are. And this does drop off below 26.6K with a bigger drop off below 26.1K. Looking at the stochastic RSI, it is still pointing down, so perhaps we need a bit more time for this to cool off, and perhaps we hug this midline for a bit here. But I do think we are at some support here, and we will see a bounce, even if it is a small bounce, giving time for the stochastic RSI to cool off a bit more and start to turn around. Looking at the RSI, do have some trend lines here, just connecting the overall lows and also the highs here. And we were thinking perhaps we need to come down to the bottom of this trend line. We'll have to wait to see if that does occur. That would mean at least coming to that 25.3K area. On the other side, if we break this yellow trend line, it would indicate that we're perhaps going to make new highs. We did have a smaller pattern here with this falling wedge pattern. 2 on the top, 2 touches on the bottom. The third touch we generally break bullish. We did eventually here, and perhaps we're coming back down to test this trend line also. So nothing really clear here looking at the RSI and trend lines. I just think it's going to take a bit longer to play out here. But with that volatility coming, looking at the Bollinger Bands, I think within maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks tops, we're going to start to see that bigger move. I do think it will be to the upside. But let's look at Market Cipher now, see what we can get from that. This is the 2-hour time frame, and we can see we did have these green dots here. But what we notice is higher lows while making lower lows on the price. So this is bullish divergence on the Market Cipher, and this does play out quite well as long as one of these green dots is below this white line here or above. So I do think we see a move to the upside here, at least on the 2-hour time frame. Doesn't mean we go straight up. It does mean we get at least a bounce. 4 hours also supporting that idea. We did get a green dot that was just confirmed. And generally these are quite good. Last 4-hour green dot here did tell us the bottom was in pretty well. Then we had that nice move to the upside. And all of these have pretty much resulted in at least a bounce. So I do think we see some upside here over the coming days. The 6-hour doesn't have a green dot yet. It is getting close. And the 12-hour is still coming down here. So it could be a few more candles before we see that green dot. So perhaps we just go sideways till we do get the green dot on at least the 12-hour time frame. And then we see that more decent bounce to the upside. The daily does have a red dot currently. It's not confirmed yet. So there are a bit of mixed signals here. The red dot isn't from very high up, so I don't think we would have a big drop resulting from it. And quite often we can get choppy like this with the red, the green, and the red dot when it is close to this 0 line. However, above the 1-day time frame, we do see the 2-day here does have a green dot confirmed, and the 3-day also now has a green dot confirmed. So we do see bullishness on these more higher term time frames. However, bearishness on the daily and the 12-hour, while there is bullishness on the 4-hour and the 6-hour. So we do need to see them get in line a bit. So perhaps we have to wait for that daily to get in line with the 2-day and the 3-day time frame. Unless we start seeing the red dot on the 2-day and the 3-day, then it would be more likely that we do move to the downside. But again, now this is the 4-day time frame, and this does have a green dot. So we are seeing them build up on the higher term time frames one by one, which tells me eventually we're going to see that move to the upside, and it's probably going to be sustained as it is over this longer term time frame. You can see on the 4-day time frame, if this went up for a while, it could go towards the end of the month. This green dot will be confirmed on tomorrow's open. And the 5-day time frame doesn't have a green dot yet. The next candle is on Monday. 6 days similar. The next candle is on Tuesday. And finally, the weekly time frame, this blue wave starting to curve. So we have to wait for that green dot on the weekly time frame. And that would really cement in that the bottom's in, and we're going to see a move to the upside. But if we go back to the 3-day time frame, and this was something I talked about in previous videos, if we do compare our current price action with the cycle back in 2014-15 here, can see we're coming off the bottom of the bear market. We had a rally, a pullback, and a second rally, and then a prolonged time of accumulation. And we mentioned, I think we're in a similar time to here. That was because when we were looking at that red day 9 dot, it did come in here. That was the first red day 9 dot since the bottom of the bear market. And on this cycle, the 9-day red dot came in here. That was the first one after the bottom of the bear market. So we were looking at that comparison and looking at when was it confirmed that the bottom of this pullback was in. And as mentioned, I think we're somewhere here. Maybe we had this rally, we've come back down, but we didn't make new lows. We could be somewhere around here. But basically, we're looking at this 3-day green dot. Once it was confirmed, it told us the bottom was in. And then we did see a lot of sideways action, but eventually we had that rally to the upside and we saw higher lows all the way up. So we're looking for that 3-day green dot with our current price action. And as mentioned, it has been confirmed, which tells me this is possibly the low. And we're just going to see higher lows here, but perhaps a bit of sideways for a while with that volatility and the Bollinger Band squeezing even more. And once we do see that move, it will be quite explosive to the upside. But I think that's about all for today. We did cover a lot. Hopefully that video wasn't too long. Thanks for watching. I'm Bitcoin Mamo. I'll see you next time. Bye.